I'd like to welcome Philip Kotler, the world's authority on marketing.
Very happy to be here.
Philip, in this economic climate, a lot of CEOs are saying this is a time to really cut costs in the marketing department, whereas media sellers are obviously saying this is a big opportunity to grab market share and spend more. So in your mind, which one is it?
You know, let me dramatize, first of all, the way you put the question in terms of some people want to see it as an era of cost cutting and some want to see it as an era of opportunity. It turns out that two airlines see it differently. Ryanair, in a statement made by the airline, says, boy, I love recessions. This is a golden opportunity. There's going to be weak competitors and we can really take over. Market share gains and all that. It looks like the other airline, EasyJet, its spokesman said, well, we're going to be conservative. We're going to go easy on that and be careful. So who's right? Well, we don't know. It will take some time to tell. And in fact, everything is circumstantial. But I put it this way. When a period like a financial meltdown occurs, when turbulence occurs in the economy, and that will occur more frequently, by the way. I'm not talking about the business cycle. I'm talking about turbulence and chaos. When that occurs, you got to see it in two lights. You have to see it as opportunity for some, and you got to see it as danger and vulnerability for others. Now, I like the firm that sees it both ways. I don't think the president of a company should say, well, we got to just cut costs across the board. That's the worst thing, by the way, across the board. They'll be killing some of their future that way. But if they say, let's now look at the vulnerabilities and protect ourselves, then let's look at the opportunities, then they're beginning to see how to handle it.
But Philip, isn't that half the battle, trying to identify which are the opportunities that are going to make you money versus lose you money?
Well, you know, we're not, Anthony, we're not going to have the CEO just sit down and intuit these things. He's going to draw together some people in the company from the different functions. For example, marketing is that function that should really supply the opportunity side and also the arguments for not cutting the budget. I mean, cutting your budget that creates your sales is a funny thing to do, unless the budget was being wasted in some ways. Certainly, you cut a budget when there's fat, but when it's working for you, if you know how to account for your marketing resources, and by the way, that's the biggest issue today, how do we show accountability for the money we're spending on campaigns? But if you can show accountability, maybe your budget won't be cut. Every marketing head is facing that issue. How to tell the CEO and the CFO that the budget is helping us rather than hurting.
It's a bit silly to cut a cost that's generating you a 300-400% ROI. That's just killing your profit, isn't it?
The link has to be proven between expenditure and sales and profit results. Yeah. It's easy to prove, by the way, in direct mail because you know the cost of sending out your mail and offers, and then you know how much response you got, and it's ROI, straightforward. It's very hard to know with 30-second commercials. Unless you set up experimental design, and some companies are playing with that, companies like P&G and Unilever. But otherwise, it's more an article of art and faith.
Let's talk about accountability and how to measure the marketing spend. I mean, it's easy, as you said, in direct marketing, direct response, you can measure it. But in non-direct response, direct marketing arenas, how do you identify ROI on your marketing spend where there's intermediaries involved, for example?
Well, the key idea is this. Suppose we can put commercials into neighborhoods, and we have some comparable neighborhoods. I mean, they've been both buying as much as each other. And then we put more budget into one neighborhood and less in another. And then we do recall scores and recognition scores to see if they remember seeing it. But we also see what they spent. You have to also have links to these stores where, like Tesco or whatever, to find out what happened. And then you might say, look, we spent twice as much in this neighborhood than that neighborhood, but they were the same at the beginning. And look at the sales difference. We have to attribute it largely, unless there's other causes, to expenditure differences. That's hard to do, but that's the theory of trying to get some measure on advertising expenditures.
A lot of people are talking about how you should operate in a recession like this, but this isn't just a normal recession, is it? This is something slightly different.
This whole financial meltdown has been a shock to all of us. I hope the U.S. isn't being blamed entirely for it, though it was the result of very loose credit standards and practiced by the U.K. as well, and some other places, and that's why it spread so fast. I'm trying to get at the bottom of what companies should do during such a dire situation. And I'm preparing a book, which is now finished, actually, called Chaotix. That's the single word, but the subtitle is The Business of Managing and Marketing in the Age of Turbulence. And we think we have a lot of things to say. It's just too bad we can't get the book out tomorrow. You know how books are. And publishers, it's got to go through the whole routine, and it will probably appear in May. And by the way, if the financial meltdown is over and we don't sell the book, that's fine with us. That's good for the world. However, when it does come out, it's going to talk about the need for companies to do a couple of things. One is to have early warning systems. That will catch things happening that they see but didn't pay attention to. You know how things are, the future's already here in some places, if you could only scope it out. The second thing is we advocate the preparation of scenarios. Good scenario, normal scenario, what if the worst happens? And preparing a strategy for each scenario. Now, you have to still make a choice, and that depends on how much risk you want to take. If you want to take just a little risk, you probably will go after the promising opportunity-loaded scenario and the strategy that goes with it. If you are risk-averse, you probably will play safe. So we can't give the advice on what scenario makes sense because it's uncertainty. The whole point is it's uncertain what's going to happen. But at least you've got contingency responses depending on how the world and the economy moves. So we think we're not talking about how you normally operate in a recession, which comes about every so many years. We're talking about even worse things than that. Look at what happens in a Mumbai situation and things you can't predict. And how do you handle your budgets and your people and keep going forward? And what changes do you have to make in your strategies?
So we're talking about disaster planning, really, aren't we?
Disaster planning is a good term, absolutely.
Philip, Barack Obama did a pretty good job on his internet marketing and his overall marketing for his campaign. So as marketers, is there anything that we can learn from his overwhelming success?
Well, it's so interesting. Our former president, Bush, came out of the Harvard Business School and was the MBA first type of MBA president, and if that's what Harvard teaches, there are some questions we can raise. Here, Barack Obama comes along, and he is the perfect MBA. Does it beautifully. I mean, the preparation and the discipline and the choice of bright people. He's not afraid of bright people. He's terribly bright, and everyone around him is too. We're actually going to see whether bright people make a difference in government. But it turns out that his victory was based on so many things, among which is that he mastered two things, high touch and high tech. High touch means there's an emotional component. He's selling hope. He's got a beautiful wife, very accomplished, two beautiful girls, and we just love to see them in the White House. High tech is he absolutely is using the internet so successfully. You know, they're building a database, and this is what we ask every company to do with its customers, to learn a lot about each customer so that you can send messages to the right people, that relevant messages at the right time. And he's done that. In fact, every time one of his people called someone about how they're going to vote, if the person said they were going to vote Republican, they were thanked and they didn't do much more. If they said they're going to vote for Obama, they thanked the person. They said, how intense is your interest in Obama? And some people would say, I love the man. And they said, well, could you be a volunteer? And remember what they did is they had different statuses for different members of the public, and they built such a volunteer group and kept them close by email. And in fact, when the campaign was over and he won the election, emails went out from his office to everyone who played such a vital role in electing him.
Interesting. Can you just elaborate on the high hope aspect of that for us?
Well, it is a learning from that campaign and for businesses that basically people are going to keep going on, and it's going to make a difference whether they go on with passion and purpose or they go on with dread and fear and dread. So basically, the CEO of a company and his people, his top management team, have to be positive, not unrealistic, but positive, believable. I mean, if it's unbelievable and they say the world is really better and so on, that's not the way to put it. So I think that the climate you establish makes a big difference.
Philip, in terms of the 4 Ps, is there any other letters that we need to add with the advent of new media and everything else, or are they pretty safe?
The 4 Ps, product, price, place, and promotion, seems to cover everything. For example, the internet. We talk about, well, are you going to blog? Are you going to do a podcast? Are you going to do a webinar? And many other things. All of those are promotional channels. They're media channels. And the P of promotion handles both messaging and media. So now, even packaging, people will say, oh, where's packaging? Because in the perfume world, the package is the whole thing. I mean, what's in the bottle is not as much cost as the bottle itself. And I say, well, packaging is part of the product. In fact, services. They say, where's services? That begins with an S. Well, services, the product is sort of the offering. The offering is a mix of product and services, and the way they're presented. So we think that they all collapse into the 4 Ps. Now, there are some people who have talked about the 4 As, the 4 Cs, and it doesn't have to be 4. It could be 12. In fact, originally, the marketing mix was a word first used by Neil Borden at Harvard, and he's had 12 elements to the marketing mix. Well, you can see that it's not an easy theory when you have 12. It's easier to remind companies when they are looking at a marketing plan or a brand plan. So what's the product, what's the price, what's the place it's going to be available, and what's the promotion we're going to use? It works. I have no interest in protecting it. If something better comes along, I'm very happy to use it.
It's actually quite good that we can still rely on something in this day and age. The pillars of the 4 Ps, that's good. So with the economy as it is and with price comparative shopping going on, is price going to become the king of the Ps?
Yeah, I think during hard times, price is one that you have to handle especially well. And I would say this to companies. Many of them don't want to initiate a price cut, right? Because they know that if they initiate it, the competitors are going to match them with a price cut. So maybe for a little period, no one's cutting the price. For example, Starbucks is still $3 or $4 a cup of coffee. On the other hand, it may be smarter to create a lower price version for people who want to save a little money and yet patronize that organization. For example, McDonald's, even before this downdraft, started to put into its menu smaller priced items. I know in the United States they're sort of like a taco something. It's about half the price of a hamburger. It's quite filling. And that's smart. That's smart. Because now the criticism of things like that is, well, what you've done is you've cannibalized the higher margin products. I mean, you've offered something lower, and now how do you get back to, when times get better, to getting people to buy the more expensive things? But in general, I think there are 2 ways to manage the price retaliation or pressure. One is to, as I said, add a lower item in your offering. And then the other is to not change your price, but add value. Mr. Customer, we know that it's hard to nowadays to pay for everything at the rates they were selling for, but we're going to absorb the shipping expense on the refrigerator. Usually that would be added to your bill. We're going to have someone come and service the machine at our expense. So instead of lowering your price, you raise your costs a little bit, but it's better margin-wise to do it that way. We call that adding value instead of lowering price.
That's a great strategy, isn't it? Because we interviewed Andy Kotler, the CEO of Intercontinental Hotels, not long ago, and he was saying that he's got sort of 7 brands in all segments of the market. So if during economic downturn people decide to go for a less prestigious brand, they can do, but he's got that covered.
I like that strategy. I've always advocated it. Namely, I say you should have 3 versions of your product, good, better, and best. Those would be called price points. And some people who are cynical say, well, it's really poor, fair, and good. But that's a matter of words. But the point is that you don't know at what stage you'll be in the business cycle. And to have multiple levels of offerings makes a lot of sense. Now, the firms that may not get into that are what we call the highly niched firms who dominate a very specialized part of the marketplace. We sometimes call them hidden champions. They're very profitable. They're usually a business-to-business company selling a component that goes into a braking system. It's like the guys who sell the shoelaces for the shoes, you know. There aren't too many competing for that, maybe. And so hidden champions, they're more secure during downdrafts because they are very close to their customers and they do the best they can for their customers, and they remain leaders and profitable leaders at that.
You say that a lot of companies are often guilty of 1P marketing.
Oh, yes.
What do you mean by that, and how can it be avoided?
Yeah, you know, it turns out that there are 4 types of CEOs when they are asked, what do you think of marketing and how are you using it? And remember, most CEOs are not marketer-trained people. They are either engineers, lawyers, accountants, or finance people. None of them have gone to a marketing course. So when you say marketing to them, they say, yeah, I need that. I don't like it, but I need someone to do those brochures and ads. Okay, that's a 1P marketer. Promotion. Promotion is what marketing's about. And it's characterized by having the people in your marketing department doing mostly what we call MarCom, which is shorthand for marketing communications. They're not driving the growth of the firm. They're not coming up with creative new products. They are selling the products through a lot of MarCom. The second type of CEO is what I call a 4P CEO, who understands that he wants brand plans, marketing plans that should cover the product, the price, the place, and promotion. So it's not just some people doing, he wants a plan. Okay. There's a third type of CEO, which is even more advanced, who says, you know, you can't do a plan until you do STP, segmentation, targeting, and positioning. In other words, I'm not Coca-Cola making a plan to sell Coke to everyone in the world. I'm a company that makes something more specialized. I have to figure out what is the market. In fact, what are the parts of the market? Which groups would respond best to what I can offer? Those will be my targets. And then what is my message for those buyers as to why they should buy from me rather than from a competitor? So that's called segmentation, targeting, positioning. And that precedes really building a marketing plan for some segment. Now, the fourth type of CEO, of which are very few, they're scarce, but is the ME type. And I'm using ME for this expression: marketing is everything. A.G. Lafley, the CEO of Procter & Gamble, says marketing is everything. Now, he does not mean that the marketing department is running the company. No way. It's a very well-balanced company for manufacturing and purchasing and marketing and finance and so on. What he means is that the customer is everything. We are a customer-driven company out to win by making the best quality, being the most innovative, and giving the most value for the money. So that is an ME type of CEO in the understanding of marketing.
And so for the CEOs that haven't come up through the marketing department and the marketing function, what hope do they have and what should they do?
Hire the best strategic-minded marketer you can as a CEO. Hire Steve Jobs if you can, and he's not available. Hire Richard Branson if you can, but he's not available. But the point is that you'll get educated as a CEO by having a superb marketing force under you and learning from that person. Also, please visit customers. Visit your big customers, especially if you're a B2B firm and you have some very big accounts that are crucial to your continuation as a company. Do you know that Jack Welch, who we admire greatly as the past president of General Electric, when asked the question, how much time of your precious time do you spend with customers? He says 50% of the time. Now look, he's got a lot of other things to do. He's got to look at financial reports and do public relations with the press and so on. No, 50%, spending time with the head of maybe Coca-Cola, the head of American Airlines, the head of, and so on and so forth. So a CEO will learn marketing that way too, even if you never learned it in any other way.
So again, it comes back to CEOs just spending more time with customers.
If CEOs are only taken up with the financial side of the business, they're not going to see customers, they're going to see numbers. They're not going to see changes in the marketplace and be ready to re-strategize.
So in terms of evolution of marketing, marketing's sort of gone from product and service, and it's now much more focused on the customer and customer engagement.
Yeah, let me put it this way. It all started with product and product-driven organizations. Love the product. And then we moved to service. We realized that it's not enough to sell something. We have to back it up with good service. And a lot of new literature came out on services marketing. Not only services marketing for hard physical products, but also services marketing for intangible firms selling intangible services like the hotel and the airline and so on, which disappear after they're over. But we went from services marketing more recently to what we call experiential marketing or experience marketing, where we said it's not enough for a bank to have a set of services, namely a line and maybe even a coffee and a tray with some apples. What's the experience of being in the bank? Do you feel like you're in a Greek temple and you must behave and stand like a good citizen in line? Is this like a living room? What is the context and the atmospherics of the place that you bring your customers? How, do they feel good? Is there any trust and liking and other emotions coming in that relationship you're trying to form with the customer? So we call that really a design problem. You design the feeling of the airplane inside, you design the hotel. So we might even call that marketing aesthetics broadly. In fact, there's a lot of talk about we overuse two senses of the five senses. We overuse visual and audio. How about the sense of touch, the sense of kinestics and so on and so forth. That is, let's touch a customer in more than one way or two ways.
Philip, I understand that at one point a CEO came up to you with a book and you refused to sign it because it wasn't up to date. Is that because you were trying to upsell and sell more books?
Yes, well, let me put it this way. I was at a seminar and the CEO of a company came up to me and said, could you sign your book for me? I said, of course, I always sign the book. I looked at the book and I said, wait, that's the first one I wrote. That's in 1967. It's called Marketing Management. And I don't think I can sign it. And he said, but I use it. You use it? And did you find the chapter on the internet very useful? He says, well, there was no chapter on the internet then. And I said, what about the concepts of customer lifetime value, brand equity, customer equity? Are you making a lot of use of those and measuring those things? I mean, like, is your brand equity growing or flat or declining? He says, well, I don't think those terms were in the book. Then he said, are you trying to get me to buy a new copy? And I said, yes, but not because I need your money. It's because the 13th edition, and I put a new edition out every 3 years, has so much more that you need in this whole changed market space and place that you've really got to do. Now, after saying that to him, I signed the book. I use it as a kind of a tease and a lesson.
A lot of people think that just focusing on the brand, it's like, focusing on something that's sort of fluffy and intangible, but that's just based on ignorance, isn't it? I mean, there's a real financial, valuable asset there in your brand equity.
Well, we do know that the brand counts for something, because when you look at the book value of a company, you find that the price paid for the stock is much more than the book value. You got to imagine that the difference is made up by the fact you have a strong brand, that you have some what we call intellectual property, that you have great channel relationships that are worth something, and so on and so forth. So therefore, we do know that brand as one of those components has a value. If you sell your business, your pricing of the business you want to sell has to take into account of how much you're turning over as a strong brand. There are even firms that are in the business of brand valuation, and they will tell you, like the company Interbrand will tell you that if you want to buy Coca-Cola's company, basically, it's going to be $60 billion, whatever. Okay, now brand equity is not brand valuation. Brand valuation is putting a pound or a dollar figure on it. Brand equity is an aggregate of a couple of measures that go along with growing stronger in a marketplace. For example, if awareness increases about your product, if preference increases, if interest increases, if there's more momentum that your product has, like the iPhone now has momentum, you track those things and you average in a weighted fashion. Whether basically the number you had last time is now larger, so your brand equity has gone up, flat, or that there's been a decline in your brand equity. It's something that if I was a CEO, would want my brand people to report on what happened to our brand equity.
Yeah, was the two most valuable things in businesses are sort of talent and your brand, but then the brand is the one thing with your reputation that brings in the talent in the first place.
Every company should be concerned about its reputation, and that's related to brand. In fact, we even talk about branding a company or managing the corporate brand. But if you take it as reputation, and reputation counts, you want to know what the factors are that build your reputation as a company. The most important thing is the quality and innovativeness of your products and services. You can't compensate for poor products by saying, well, we're giving a lot of money to charity. Or you could you sometimes say, but we're making money. Yeah, but you're making money now. But if it's not satisfying the customers, they're going to start going on the internet and telling how bad you are, and you won't make money later. So basically, the first thing in reputation is really your products and services. The second thing is your vision as a company and the quality of your management and how they may stand out and articulate the purpose of the company. The third thing would be your financial performance over time. Over long-term profitability suggests a company that has been really serving the market well. And the fourth thing might be other things like the workplace environment. I mean, are your employees satisfied? Are you recruiting the best ones? Are they motivated? The fifth might be the whole emotional way the company, the customers and the stakeholders feel about the company. And the sixth might be its corporate social responsibility initiatives and so on. Now, those are factors that have to be managed, whether you're talking about managing our reputation or our brand. But those are the handles.
Some people have said that the brand manager doesn't actually own the sort of the creation of the brand values anymore. It's because of user-generated content and customer engagement that the empowerment has really moved away, and there's been a massive shift to the consumer in terms of the creation of brand values. What's your thoughts there?
Oh, it's such a different world today. I'll tell you, customer empowerment is one of the biggest forces to reckon with now, and to value. In the old days, if I wanted to buy a Volvo, there would only be two sources of information. The Volvo advertising, and then my friends who might have a Volvo, or I might even stop a guy who owns a Volvo on the street and say, how do you like it? Look at how limited that is. Today, I go to Volvo's website. I learn a lot about the car. Then I go to J.D. Powers, which interviews people for every car that was purchased. How did you like it after you bought it? And 6 months after you bought it, how do you still like it? So I will know how satisfying the car is that way. Then I go to Edwards.com, which gives me even the price I ought to pay for the car, not the list price, but what people are paying for it, and comments about the car. So I, as a consumer, are so empowered that I'm almost dictating the terms of purchase. I mean, I'll just go to someone else. And I'm doing this, and I may end up not buying the Volvo. I might have learned during that process that there are other cars that are more interesting to me. So how do companies handle this? Now, let's take the other side. How do you handle an angry customer? A company today can be destroyed by one angry customer. There's a guy who's mad at one of the airlines, without my mentioning it, and he put out a site with the name of that airline sort of turned around a little bit, but everyone knows the airline. And he invites all the people who have had bad experiences to put their message on that site. And I'll tell you, it's kind of, you can't stop that. So look at the power customers have for the good or putting pressure on you.
But Philip, some people still talk about customer satisfaction, but that's got to be really old school now, just not living in the times, right? It's moved on from merely satisfaction.
It's not the gold standard. The gold standard is delighting the customer. And by the way, there's a study about those relatively few companies that are so dear to their customer that when asked, what if that company disappeared, they would say that that would be terrible. In fact, the question is put this way: are there any companies you love and would dearly miss if they went out of existence? And in the study, and the book in which this was reported was called Firms of Endearment, 25 companies came up, companies like Apple, Google, and Southwestern Airlines, and eBay, and so on, which people would miss. In fact, they're woven into our lives, our daily lives. And I mention this because that's the gold standard for performance, that you really are very meaningful to the group you want to serve, and they would miss you dearly.
It's interesting you say that because I just can't imagine my life without Google. So how do you actually get sort of customers to engage with you to such an extent that they literally love your brand?
That's the magic question. I mean, some people have called that cult brands, you know, like Harley Davidson. Oh God, those people who have Harley Davidson motorcycles, that's called creating a brand community. A brand community is, look, if I find out that you have a Harley and I have a Harley and I don't know you from Adam, we're going to talk for the next few hours. If I find out that you use Crest toothpaste and I use Crest toothpaste, that's the end of that. I have no interest in you for that reason. You see, so it happens with Harleys, it happens with Nikes, it happens with Apple computer. What's behind it? It's a number of practices as well as the brand itself. And in the book, The Firms of Endearment, they list 8 common characteristics shared by the most loved companies, including the fact that they have a better set of employees. They are much more open to employee suggestions. You could reach the president with an idea. And by the way, one of the most interesting things is these are companies that spend less on marketing. You might have said, oh, the reason they are a cult brand is they spend so much on marketing. No. The fact is that it's the customers who do the marketing, and you don't have to spend so much. The customers are talking about you all the time, and so why should you spend much money on marketing?
Wow, because I've never received a direct mail piece from Google.
No.
I've always known about them. Yeah. Philip, you're a big believer that marketing is constantly evolving. So what do you think are sort of 2 or 3 of the macro trends that are emerging now within the marketing community?
Well, one of them is accountability and all the work being done to figure out what you're getting for your campaign expenditures. We now have about 3 or 4 books written called Marketing Metrics in one way or another, telling us we need measurements. The CEO and the CFO demand those measures, and that's a big trend. The second is the search for customer insights. It's a different word than doing marketing research. Marketing research gives you a lot of demographics and things like that and a 100-page report, but sometimes you end up saying, well, what did we learn? Well, a customer insight is almost a new, very new way to look at the market. Maybe it's a new segmentation. In the dog food market, the old segmentation was demographic. Food for big dogs, small dogs, food for young dogs, old dogs. Now it's what's the attitude toward the dog that the owner has. And if the owner sees the dog as an infant, you claim that your food product is the way you want to treat your infant and be careful with your infant and so on and so forth. So customer insights, now they happen occasionally, but there are processes of creativity that will provoke a good marketing staff into coming up with a new idea for the product. We need big ideas in marketing, and any firm that is not investing in innovative work and creative work is going to miss the boat. Because most of these firms, they're doing what we call incremental innovation, if they're doing that at all. So they're putting out another soup, another brand of cereal. It's even more interesting when instead of just putting out another box of cereal, you make a new thing with cereal, like the cereal health bar. Or you make the yogurt, which has a plastic top, and there's cereal in it, so you could then put the cereal in the yogurt, make it more tasty. So this idea, I call it lateral marketing rather than vertical marketing. Vertical marketing is another box of cereal. Lateral marketing is thinking out of the box, thinking across, thinking what else can we do with the capacities that we have for making cereal or for putting out toys or something like that.
Philip, the marketing industry is inundated with sort of buzz terms. In fact, I think even buzz marketing is a new term in the marketing sector. But can you tell me, is there any new hot thing that's coming up you think will actually have some stickability?
Guerrilla marketing has a little movement to it, and it turns out that, and by the way, it's guerrilla, it's the street fighter, not the ape, when we spell the word. It's especially interesting for small businesses. Small businesses have, most of the world's businesses are small. And we marketers are criticized for always saying, this is marketing and talking about Coca-Cola. And they don't have the resources for budgets, for expensive marketing research. So what about the small players? And our argument normally is two things. One is there is such a thing as low-cost research and low-cost advertising on the internet, for example. And we do more teaching of how to do these things with lower budgets than normal. And then secondly, we say you got to be smarter. You're going to be more agile. You're going to be closer to the market. I mean, the company's decisions are being made on the 30th floor by a president, a CFO, and maybe a marketing guy around there. But really, you're a small businessman, and you can be close to the customer and move faster. Okay, so guerrilla marketing, I think, is a good movement. Buzz marketing is very interesting because if you can get good word of mouth, it replaces the need to spend a lot of money. And there's two ways to do buzz marketing. Sometimes you hire someone who's very sexy and everyone wants to see them in action, Tiger Woods, and you get him to endorse your shoes or something like that. So basically, that works. Richard Branson is supreme at that, by the way. Even when he started the wedding gown business, I think he put on a wedding gown and marched down as if he was going to be married. So that works, The other kind of buzz marketing is becoming professionalized, and that is there's a company, for example, called Grapevine, which actually has teams of people. of different ages, like maybe 50,000 college students, maybe 70,000 senior citizens, and you bring to that fella your product and say, I like this buzzed about. And he'll say, if he likes the product, sometimes he says, you'd be wasting your money. There's nothing to buzz about it. But if he likes the product, he'll say, give me 50,000 units, because I'm going to give them away to 50,000 college students. And to tell them to just report on how they buzzed about it. They don't have to, if it's not natural for them. If it did come up, report that it did come up. What did people say? And you'll get a report from me. And hopefully there will be a lot of word of mouth going around. So customer insights, now they happen occasionally, but there are processes of creativity that will provoke a good marketing staff into coming up with a new idea for the product. We need big ideas in marketing, and any firm that is not investing in innovative work and creative work is going to miss the boat. So because most of these firms, they're doing what we call incremental innovation, if they're doing that at all. So they're putting out another soup, another brand of cereal. It's even more interesting when instead of just putting out another box of cereal, you make a new thing with cereal, like the cereal health bar. Or you make the yogurt, which has a plastic top, and there's cereal in it, so you could then put the cereal in the yogurt, make it more tasty. So this idea I call it lateral marketing rather than vertical marketing. Vertical marketing is another box of cereal. Lateral marketing is thinking out of the box, thinking across, thinking what else can we do with the capacities that we have for making cereal or for putting out toys or something like that.
But the world's best companies don't just have innovation in the innovation department or even just in the marketing department. They got all employees focused on creative ideas and innovation.
I mean, the smartest companies get everyone to be thinking innovatively. They have like a 3M culture and so on. But here's what some companies have done. The company that does washing machines and dryers, the Whirlpool company, which is #1 in the world for large appliances, ended up choosing 400 people and training them in ideation. And they're coming out with so many new ideas, not just a refrigerator whose door has a computer on it or whose door has an espresso machine on it and so on. But they even got into the garage business where they are selling a service to fix up garages so they're pleasant places to park your car, and you have a little workbench and you can do some woodworking. So that's one way, by giving that creativity responsibility to some people in the organization. Not full time. They're doing other things, but they're ideationally trained. The second company is Shell Oil, which I like very much because they have every so often a big meeting with the middle and upper management, listening to people working for Shell saying, I would like my 10 minutes to give you my idea, Mr. Management. And they take their PowerPoints and they show, we can save money or make money by doing this. And so the management listens to about 20 to 100 ideas that day, sits down afterwards and chooses a few of those ideas and gives $100,000 to one guy because that's an exciting idea. In fact, a great idea he got $600,000. So they have a pool of money. And they end up, and Shell says that of the 5 best initiatives in that year, 4 came from ideas from employees. Then a third company is Samsung, and Samsung tends to have an actual lab where many people are working on many projects. They call it the Value Innovation Lab. And so there's one group working on the cell phone, and they're working full-time, not on the existing cell phone, but to replace it, to do better. And another group's working on television. So companies have to find a way to allow creativity to emerge. I always say, you have a choice. You innovate or you stagnate. Now, innovations have failed, but stagflation is a sure, stagnating is a sure failure too. So you've got to really put some money into creativity today.
Philip, I'm hearing more and more got the job title, a new job title called CMO. In your mind, what does a CMO, what does a really good CMO do, and where do they add value?
Well, there are studies now about CMOs, Chief Marketing Officers. One book came out just recently from David Acker, David being the guy who started our strong interest in branding, but he's been working now on trying to find out from CMOs what they think. We have about 2,000 CMOs, by the way. It's not a fancy name for a VP of marketing. Usually, if you're a multi-business firm, you have a bunch of VPs of marketing in different businesses. It's sort of putting at headquarters, at the same level as the CFO, the CIO, Chief Information Officer, the CTO, Chief Technology Officer, a guy who represents the voice of the customer and gets the company to be customer-driven. So they have a lot of responsibilities, even in their job description. Help us get more customer insights, help us become more customer-driven, look at our product line and make sure we don't have some dead wood that we should clean out, help us build brands, strong brands, help us account for the amount of money we've been spending on marketing, and finally give us some of those new technical tools and mathematics that will make marketing much more scientific. It's a big plate, but it turns out that most of the smart CMO probably should tackle two of those things when first hired and make a dent. Something which will show up early enough that what he's paid or she's paid is yielding a return. Because you can't do a little of 6 different things and it adds up. No, do 2 things that are big.
For the multinational companies that are getting into new emerging markets like India and China, etc., do the same rules apply in terms of getting into those markets than they do in the West, or is it all different rules and different paradigms?
Well, we're talking about sort of international marketing in part and how you go into another country. You don't go with the identical products, the identical packaging, the identical prices. You have to be actually being glocal. Now, glocal is a kind of coined word for being global and local. For example, I was recently in the country, and McDonald's, one of the big things there is soup. I never went to McDonald's for soup. They've got about 3 soups because the country loves soups, and so they added that to the menu. So going local is very important. Now, if you're going to go into China or India, there's 2 or 3 things in mind. Either you're going because there's a market there that might buy your modified product, or you're going there to make your product and to bring it back here because it's cheaper to make there. So we got to distinguish between why you're in China or India. By the way, China is, everyone calls it the factory of the world, and they're calling India the office of the world. And when I was in Brazil recently, they're calling Brazil the farm of the world. Brazil, being one of the BRIC countries, BRIC, has great agricultural resources and minerals and so on and so forth. So in any case, if you're going to go to China, for example, to sell, basically there's a huge market of 1 billion people, and if you have something good, it would be wonderful if you could actually get distribution and penetrate that country and know something about, I would say, some segmentation, because most products you have aren't going to be for everyone, and to get the data. And I always said that if you're going to do marketing research in a developing country, you can't just ask anyone to do it for you. You've got to ask who is being used by McDonald's to do the research. Who's Coca-Cola using? Because obviously they're not going to tolerate poor marketing research, and you have to do it when you enter a country and find out who the best firms are using.